There are times when the soul becomes tired. Not merely the body, but the inner person, the mind, the emotions, the will, even the part of us that reaches towards God. We may become worried from disappointment, responsibility, grief, conflict, unanswered prayer, prolonged uncertainty, caring for others, fighting the same battles, and carrying burdens that seem to have no end. And when we become deeply tired, something else can happen. We begin to interpret God through the lens of our exhaustion. We wonder where He is. We question whether He cares. We wonder why He's not answered. We may even begin to doubt truth we once held with confidence. But we must remember something important. Fatigue makes a bad theologian. When the soul is exhausted, feelings become very persuasive. They tell us that because God feels distant, He must be distant. Because we cannot see what He's doing, He must not be doing anything because we feel weak. We must have somehow failed. Feelings are real without necessarily being reliable interpreters of reality. God's character does not change because our emotions do. The psalmist did not say, "The Lord is my shepherd," when I feel close to Him. He said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And then comes the astonishing promise, He restores my soul. Notice that Scripture does not shame the weary soul. It tells us that God restores it. Sometimes we need to stop. Sometimes we need to sleep. Sometimes we need food, quiet, friendship, laughter, tears, or simply permission to admit, "I cannot carry this today." When Elijah collapsed beneath the burning tree, God did not begin with a theological lecture. He allowed him to sleep. Then He provided food and water. Then He allowed him to rest again. There's wisdom in recognizing that we are the creatures, not the Creator. We have limits. God does not. And there can even be pride hidden inside our refusal to acknowledge our limitations. We imagine that everything depends on us. We carry everyone else's burdens while refusing to let anyone carry ours. The Scripture says, "Carry each other's burdens. In this way you fulfill the law of Christ." We're never designed to live as self-sufficient creatures. There's a difference between resting because we are weary and giving up because we are weary. A Christian may need to lie down, but he's not called to remain there forever. There comes a time to rise. Isaiah says, "He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak." Notice the wording. God does not merely give strength to the strong. He gives strength to the weary. That means weakness is not the end of the story. In fact, weakness can become the place where we discover that the strength we needed was never supposed to come from ourselves in the first place. Paul learned this when he pleaded with God concerning his suffering. The answer was not the immediate removal of the weakness. It was, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness." That's a difficult truth for the self-sufficient heart. We want God to make us strong that we no longer need Him. God often makes us aware of our weakness so that we will discover how deeply we need Him. This is where spiritual fatigue must be distinguished from spiritual failure. Sometimes weariness comes because we've been fighting faithfully for a long time. Sometimes it comes because we've been carrying something God never asked us to carry. And sometimes it comes because of unresolved grief. Sometimes because of sin that needs to be confessed. And sometimes because we've neglected the ordinary means by which God nourishes His people. His word, prayer, worship, fellowship, and rest. And sometimes we simply live in a fallen world where even faithful people grow tired. We should therefore examine our hearts without condemning ourselves. Is there sin? Confess it. Is there a burden? Give it to God. Is there someone who can help? Let them. Do we need rest? Rest. But whatever we do, we must not allow exhaustion to become our theology. When the mind is tired, return to what you know. When the heart is confused, return to what God has said. When prayer feels empty, pray anyway. When Scripture feels dry, open it anyway. Not because feelings do not matter, but because our feelings are not sovereign. God is. Jesus Himself said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Notice what Christ does not say. He does not say, "Come to me when you've recovered." He says, "Come to me because you're weary." The weariness itself becomes the invitation. And perhaps there's something even deeper happening in the exhausted soul than we realize. We often think we simply want relief, but perhaps what we really need is life. He has said, "I've come that they may have life and have it to the full." There's a kind of weariness that is really a longing to be alive again, to have hope again, to love again, to pray again, to see beauty again, to believe that tomorrow is worth entering. The soul does not merely need distraction from its weariness, it needs renewal. And renewal does not ultimately come from finding more strength from within ourselves. It comes from receiving life from Christ. That is why the exhausted Christian must be careful not to make feelings the final judge of truth. You may feel abandoned, but God has said, "Never will I leave you, nor will I forsake you." You may feel weak, but God says He gives strength to the weary. You may feel that you cannot go another step, but Scripture says, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagle. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." And notice that the promise does not say we will always soar. Sometimes we run, sometimes we walk, sometimes we can barely stand, but God remains faithful through all three. Perhaps that is one of the great lessons of spiritual maturity. Faith is not the absence of weakness. It is learning where to take our weakness. So do not despise your exhaustion. Listen to it. Examine it. Rest when you need it. Repent when you need it. Ask for help when you need help. But don't build your theology upon how you feel at the bottom of the valley. Look up. The shepherd is still there. The promises are still true. Christ is still sufficient, and God is still sovereign. There may be days when you cannot say, "I feel strong." Then say something better. "I am weak, but God is strong." There may be days when you cannot say, "I understand what God is doing." Then say, "I don't understand, but I trust the one who does." There may be days when you cannot see the road ahead. Then take the next faithful step. You do not need tomorrow's strength today. God gives grace for today. And when tomorrow comes, there will be grace there too. So rest, weary soul. Let yourself be cared for. Let God be God. Open His Word. Pray. Receive. And when strength comes again, rise. Not because you finally discovered enough strength in yourself, but remember His strength is sufficient. The soul may grow weary, but God does not. And the shepherd who restores the soul is not finished with his sheep.